A very good morning to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Thursday morning. The eye's not got better. It looks like it's even got worse. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about my eye. I'm here to talk about Lucas Paqueta. For those of you who are night owls like me and scour through social media at the end of the night before I decide to actually go to bed, may have seen the story that Flamengo, the Brazilian club, are talking about taking Lucas Paqueta back to Brazil permanently. Look, if you're new to the channel, please do hit the like button if you like what you see and what you hear. Please become a subscriber of the channel. Doesn't cost you anything to become a subscriber, free of charge, very easy to become a subscriber. So please do that as well to hear the latest news on West Ham United. So how's this come about? Well, it was an interesting tweet that came out at around about 11 o'clock on Wednesday evening, suggesting that West Ham United had been speaking to Brazilian club Flamengo about the possibility of Lucas Paqueta being sold back to the club where he started his career. The tweet comes from Globo Esporte. It's a report from a reporter called Kahe Mota. Probably got his name wrong or pronounced it wrong. He's got over 350,000 followers on Twitter, or X or whatever it's called now. And I'm going to show you with the translation snapshots of the tweets that he sent out. So here he is, just to make sure that you don't think I'm making all this up. I don't know how you pronounce his name, Kahe Mota. And so the first tweet, there were several of them, went on to say there are negotiations involving Flamengo, Lucas Paqueta, and West Ham. Talks have begun about a month ago, and the club received the green light, the go-ahead, to move forward under the conditions that make the agreement viable. So basically, there's talk about the player going back to Flamengo on a permanent basis. And he went on to say in the first bit of the tweet, players and staff, the player himself, the staff, the lawyers in both England and West Ham are involved. It's quite intriguing. He went on to say, the player is primarily focused on the team at the Copa America. We know he's been having a smile on his face. He's been actually enjoying himself in the Copa America at the moment. And then it went on to say, Lucas Paqueta is aware and welcomes the return home to Brazil. He's aware of the negotiations that are happening. The negotiations, obviously, are complex, and Flamengo will take all legal precautions to make the investment without the risk of losing it in the event of suspension. So obviously, they're referring to the potential suspension that he may get, or the ban more than the suspension that he may get because of the betting charges against him. But it seems as if Flamengo are looking at quite potentially willing to take this risk. Then it goes on to say, West Ham's starting position is clear. West Ham want to sell. The English club invested, talked about how much money we spent on the player, and even lost our chance, to be able to sell him to Man City last summer because of the process that's going on. So I guess what he's referring to, obviously, they're the betting charges. Now, Flamengo, on the other hand, is trying to find more plausible alternatives. Now, what those plausible alternatives are, I don't really know. I'm going to come to those when I've finished going through these tweets. And the next one, taking Paqueta out of England. This is interesting. Taking Paqueta out of England at this moment is the point that unites all parties involved in the negotiations. Does that mean he's not coming back to West Ham United after Copa America? He's staying in Brazil? The club, the lawyers, and the midfielder staff, his entourage, agree that going through the investigation with pressure from the sensationalist English press greatly harms the defence for his acquittal. So it's quite obvious that they believe that whilst Paqueta stays in England, or if he returns to England, the scrutiny on him will be so severe, so great, that he won't get a fair hearing. Quite intriguing. Um, and then goes on. Outside of Europe, Paqueta would have more peace of mind, not only to pursue his career, but also to defend himself in this process. In addition, he would return to an environment in which he would be fully welcomed by the fans who already, it says who it translates to, who are already anxious. I think that should translate to who are already excited about his possible immediate return to Brazil. Now it gets interesting because the next translation is Marcos Bratz is the one trying to tie up the ends in this negotiation, which is far from simple. The reality is that the doors are open of the Nino do Urubu Flamengo. They're open, and Lucas Paqueta, his eyes are shining at the possibility. Now, who is Marcus Bratz? Well, Marcus Bratz is an interesting character. He's a Brazilian politician, and he's also vice president at Flamengo. He also held the role of Secretary of Sports and Leisure in Rio de Janeiro. He was also the individual who broke the West Ham news that an offer was made for Flamengo centre back Fabrizio Bruno. Now, look, how much of this is really happening? Well, I think for a reporter of such stature to actually report that there's this individual, this Marcos Bruno involved. Sorry, Marcos got his name wrong already. Marcos Bratz involved seems to suggest that Flamengo are quite serious. Now, Paqueta, he started his career at Flamengo up until 2019 when they sold him to Italian club AC Milan for over 38 million euros. He made 88 appearances for the club, scoring 16 goals. So he's loved. He's seen as well. He is one of the pivotal players in the current Brazilian team, and for Flamengo to get him back would be a major coup for them. And in the recent interview that both Stein and Lopetegui did earlier this week, they discussed Paqueta. They talked about how he and his family were suffering under the stress of the charges, etc. And there was talk about, they were talking about bringing him back to West Ham, where this is his extended family. But it seems to me now that Tim Steiden was out in Brazil for far more than just looking at buying players. It looks quite possible that an agreement must have been made while he was out there for the player to go back to Flamengo. Now, just how much he would be sold for, I don't know. I mean, the outlay that we've paid with all add-ons, etc., comes to something like around £54 million. I guess we're not really going to get £85 million. No way. I think quite possibly if we can make our money back and cut our losses, I wonder if that would be something that West Ham United might grab with open arms. Because let's not forget, if the player does get banned, and there's every reason to suggest that the FA would not have brought the charges against him if they were not confident in making those charges stick. If he was to be banned, West Ham United would effectively be writing off 50 odd million pounds. Now, I know X did a thing. I don't follow his Patreon, but I'm aware that he did a show, I think yesterday on Wednesday, talking about quite possibly that the charges may not stick. I don't know. I mean, we're hearing quite a lot of different detail. Now, if the charges don't stick, as X has been suggesting, then why would we even bother to consider selling Paqueta to anybody at not necessarily at a loss, but even if we made our money back? So if X is right that the charges won't stick, then I can't see this happening. I can't see Flamengo being given the go-ahead to buy the player. But if those charges do stick, then it takes away a massive headache for West Ham United that we could possibly be getting something back for the player should he get banned. Now, I said earlier, I had some ideas. I don't know what they can afford, but what West Ham could do, we know we're looking for players, and I've kind of looked at the Flamengo squad, and there are a few players that are quite interesting. And the first one is a young 18-year-old called Loran. Now, Loran is a left-footed attacking midfielder who's valued at around about 12 million pounds. Sorry, 12 million euros. He's contracted to Flamengo until the end of 2025. Now, he's an interesting player. He's an upcoming player, only 18 years of age, and also valued at that sort of money. Now, there are the other left-footed attacking midfielders in the squad who are a bit older, but not valued to this to this much. He's able to play in several positions. He's a versatile attacking midfielder. He can play in central attacking midfield. He can play as a winger and he can play as a striker. He's got good strengths, great vision, good passing ability, great agility, good movement. He's got a good shot on him as well. He's very good at scoring goals. But he's still learning his trade at 18. He's still learning how to be more defensive minded when a team are under attack. And his decision making sometimes under pressure needs to be sort of tempered a little bit as well. So there's him for 12 million euros. Of course, nothing near the value of Paqueta, but just bear 12 million euros in mind for a moment. We know we also need a striker. And there are a couple of strikers at West Ham, at Flamengo who we've been linked to in the past. And one of them is Pedro. And the other, of course, is Gabriel Barbosa. But it's Pedro who seems to be the main man at this moment in time. Look, he had a short, unsuccessful spell at Fiorentina. I think they bought him for something like 11 million euros, and then he went straight back to Flamengo, I think, on loan, and then they re-signed him. Overall, for the Brazilian club, 248 appearances, 126 goals. This season alone, 32 appearances, 24 goals, 6 assists. He's a typical number 9, a strong front man, a proper traditional target man, a proper goal poacher. And it could be interesting. He's valued at, even though at the age of 27, he's valued at 23 million euros. So you put that alongside Loran, who's valued at 12 million euros. You've got there 40 million. My maths is awful, isn't it? You got there 35 million euros in total. That's about 30 million pounds. But that's still way short of what we believe Paquetá is worth. But perhaps, just maybe, 35 million euros, 30 million pounds plus an additional fee on top. I don't know, maybe 20 million euros on top, 20 million pounds, should I say, sorry. Or even quite possibly if we put something in like an agreement where if Paquetá ever gets sold again in the future, that we take a cut of that, maybe another 10, 15%, 20% of that, then all of a sudden you're starting to look at this potential deal happening to be quite realistic. If we can get a couple of players for Paquetá, a bit of money in the bank as well, and maybe an agreement in the future to have a sell-on clause too, then all of a sudden things are looking like they quite possibly can happen. Now, with Marcos Braz being in the Brazilian government as well, I've got a feeling that they're going to get involved in some way to challenge the charges made against the player. They're going to stand by him. Recently, the Brazilian Football Confederation confirmed that they met with Paquetá before the Copa America started, and they spoke to him. They spoke to the FA as well, that they were not going to withdraw Paquetá from the Copa American squad. And they said that they stand by him. So in Brazil, it looks quite interesting that they believe their man is innocent. Whether they can win this case or not, I do not know. It's going to be very, very interesting. But if they're willing to take that risk and take a headache away from West Ham United by buying the player, would you take it? I think it's intriguing. I think it's something that West Ham United would seriously, seriously consider. I can't see how they wouldn't want to consider it. Um, how much truth is there in this? Yeah, like I said at the beginning of the show, if they're quoting a Brazilian MP, a member of their parliament, if they're quoting him being involved in the deal, who is also the vice president of Flamengo, then I imagine that there might well be an element of truth in this. Watch this space. This is going to grow, and I actually do think if this is really happening, I do think we will go in for a couple of their players as part of a deal to let Paquetá go. Watch this space. It's always an interesting. It's always interesting being a West Ham United fan. You're never short of information like this. It's. I'd like to say it's a laugh a minute, but sometimes it's not. Interesting turn of events during the transfer window. Let's see what happens. Let's not forget the international transfer window opened only a couple of days ago, so maybe they've been holding this off because they knew they couldn't announce it anytime sooner because the international window wasn't open. What more can I tell you? Listen out for more news. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, please do become a subscriber. Please do hit that like button. And there's also a bell notification somewhere which will alert you to when the next show is on. You don't want to miss it, do you? I'll see you all later.